It's going to be at least twice as good as other nights because we have at least twice as many speakers as usual. We've got these two amazing guys, Nick Messina and Justin Wells. They work for a company called Centric Consulting, where they help organizations with transforming toward more agility. They love the power of brainstorming and visualizing information to make it more concrete. We're going to be doing some of this tonight. I was at Agile Rhode Island a couple of weeks ago, and they were still talking about Nick and Justin, the talk they did many months back. So we've got a lot to look forward to tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Nick Messina and Justin Wells.
Okay. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about how to ruthlessly prioritize with user story mapping. So briefly, I'm Nick Messina. I'm a manager at Centric Consulting. I work with a variety of different clients across different industries. One of the things I specialize in is helping companies understand their business processes and how they can improve them through business process improvement, technology, and always adopting an agile mindset. And I've really come to love user story mapping as a great tool, and excited to talk about it tonight.
I'm Justin Wells, a co-worker of Nick's at Centric Consulting. I've been gone through a waterfall to agile true journey on my career. Started out in DoD area, which if folks couldn't know, it's a very hardcore waterfall. Follow by the book, follow your Microsoft project schedule to the T. So, and gone through a couple of different industries, eventually ending up at Centric, where I'm able to leverage my experience across industry, going through a couple of agile transformations, leading those at different various companies, and understanding how to take your company from a journey through that and helping them understand that it truly is a journey. It's not something that you're going to flip the switch and it's going to happen. So anxious to work with you guys today.
All right. So, three main things we're going to cover. What is ruthless prioritization? How does it apply, factor into backlog management? And lastly, why user story mapping is a great tool to help visualize your backlog and help you prioritize. So, and this is going to be interactive, ask questions. We're going to do some fun exercises with the user story maps towards the end. So, let's get started. Okay. Does anyone want to take a stab at what they would consider what ruthless prioritization means to them? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Delete at least one thing where the reaction that you have when you delete it is, what?
That is a great definition. So slightly along those lines. So ruthless, having no pity. Merciless, relentless. Prioritization, to list or rate in order of priority. So I would say ruthless prioritization is to list in order of priority without pity for lesser priorities. So Sheryl Sandberg talks about ruthless prioritization. She talks about we have great ideas and we have good ideas. But we're doing ourselves a disservice if we focus on the good ideas. Because we have to make the hard choices and we have to provide the best value for our customers and drive towards those outcomes. And the only way to do that is by focusing on the best of ideas. Otherwise, we fall into the trap of working and caring about all of our stories in our backlog. Everything that someone has brought up is a good idea. And then we're going to lose sight of where we're trying to go. So I'm going to hand it over to Justin, talk a little bit, dive into the backlog.
So as Nick was talking about those ideas, I think most of us know where those ideas are kept. And for those, going through the Scrum Guide, go through Agile 101 is what's the most important thing to have? You have to have a backlog. Just having a backlog isn't necessarily going to help you get anything done if that backlog is a laundry list of things that you need to do. A poorly managed backlog, or a backlog that gets overwhelmed and isn't prioritized, can actually slow your team down. And it almost takes you back to saying, why do you have a backlog to begin with? So what we're going to really try to focus on with going through the next few slides and also through the user story mapping is how to take, even if it's a small backlog, how to take that backlog and deliver the most value within that backlog. So rather than say the importance of a backlog, it's really important to have a prioritized backlog. That's the biggest piece where you can land in your backlog. So one of the big things that I think I've noticed across working with teams is sometimes the backlog appears to be a to-do list or something that you check off. How many people here have heard someone, whether it's in your daily stand-up or a meeting or just walking through the halls, say, "Oh, we'll just throw it on the backlog"?
Couple. Yeah.
I think most people probably heard that. And it's in the moment. It's a very easy, for either a Scrum Master or Product Owner, easy to say, sure, yeah, absolutely, let's get that captured. And then over time, that backlog just builds up with those same items that aren't prioritized, that aren't well-defined, and your backlog gets out of hand. And then almost feels like an overwhelming task to even get through it or prioritize, and there's downstream impacts from there. So, ultimate goal, a well-organized backlog, epics, structure, a core, but there's also different elements beyond that that can help take you to the next level. So really the product backlog, it's the heart of what you're trying to deliver. And if you want to advance a little bit. So these 3 circles here, I think it's probably different words across the industry, different terminology that each company's used. But the bottom line, you're trying to deliver customer value, something that the team can deliver from both a time frame perspective and the resources within the team, and then also how does that impact the business value? Those 3 things, if you can have your backlog prioritized in the center of those, your backlog is going to be in great shape. Of course, depending on priorities across things may lean a little towards one of these circles specifically. However, if you can align back towards that center piece there with the Venn diagram, you really have your backlog in a good shape. In a way to also empower your team to go deliver the most value to your customer. So, just sitting here with your team saying, "Oh, let's get our backlog prioritized." That's a simple task. I think all of us in this room can probably recognize that's not the easiest thing to do. And it's very easy to allow your backlog to get out of hand. Similar to a pile of laundry. Maybe this dog doesn't look too happy getting covered in the leaves here. It's that, how I posed the question earlier about just throw it on the backlog. That's when it comes to, throw it in the laundry pile, throw it, pile up leaves in the corner. Forget just the mundane tasks that you do in your daily life. If you overlook and forget, it's the same type of thing with backlog refinement that oftentimes becomes a secondary function of the Agile team and not priorities. Prioritizing your backlog helps you identify the priorities later. Again, ways this might happen, of course, not refining your backlog. I think one big thing that is definition of ready, and a lot of, in the Agile, what's the push? Definition of done. You need to have definition of done. Definition of done needs to happen. It's very easy to overlook definition of ready and making sure your team knows exactly what they're going to be delivering on, what the business value is, how much that impacts the customer, and what the impact of the team is as well. And then one other thing that needs to be captured here is dedication to the backlog as a part of your team. The backlog is a team member. And that sounds kind of crazy to say, but it really is. The backlog is that, that 9th member of the team or 8th member of the team, Scrum rules here, team size. The backlog is a team member. It's a part of your team that you need to respect that and understand how it plays into what you're trying to accomplish. Is there a question? So this was a really interesting analogy that I read in thinking about how we were going to talk through our backlog and user story mapping was a grocery list. You think about you walk into local market basket over here in Waltham or whatever, and your goal is to what? Is to go through that list and check off all the items. And how many times have you thought that when you look at a backlog that's grown to 100 items, all right, well, let's see how many we can get through in even a refinement session. How many can we get through in this time? Or how many can we get in this sprint? that mindset it's easy to succumb to that, and to then take a step back and say, of this list, what are the top 5 we want to deliver? What are the top 10 we want to deliver? And what are these? How do these value within that spectrum of the circles that we had there? So being able to step yourself back from how do I get through this and really understanding how do I set it up to deliver on this is really the shift there. The biggest thing to think about is it's not a set of to-dos. It's not. Your list of items aren't to-dos. Your list of items needs to have a reason for why you're doing them, and that's the biggest piece. A shift from where a lot of people can think about, we have this list to do, let's get through it. It's a set of items that you want to deliver value on. And the biggest takeaway, and some of the things that you can use to help accomplish this and help get out of the sense of everything being most urgent. I know people probably have had that experience with either a stakeholder or a senior leader that says, no matter what it is, this is the highest priority thing in the moment. But that maybe it's not. How is that discussion had? So if you make everything most urgent, you're never going to get through that. And some of these tasks here, one of which we're going to focus on today, but others include value stream mapping, really common nowadays in the Agile world of something that you can look across your industry and across different products to how each team's impacting that. And then also just continuously refining your backlog. The biggest piece there is really just making that backlog refinement a priority. So how can you build, and I really want to emphasize the maintain here, because I think in my experience, when you ask someone about Agile ceremonies, what's the first thing someone's trying to say?
Retrospective.
Stand up retrospective sprint planning, at least from what those are all the selling points of Agile. This is what you can do. No one's like, oh man, I love backlog refinement. Let's get going. And then you find, let's say you start your sprint and get through week 1, and all of a sudden it's week 2 and the dev team's like, hey, we're crunched for time. All right, well, you got to give me 2 hours for backlog refinement. What are they going to do? Get out of here. You're like, no, I got higher priority, more things, so we got to get through dev. Well, let's just, hold on, we'll do backlog refinement next week. We'll do backlog refinement next week. And backlog refinement, it could be the most important in a lot of it, depending on what type of product you're delivering, depending on the team size, etc. And not prioritizing that whether it's a meeting, whether it's having everyone in the same room, whatever, however you're doing it. There's various different ways now. I know there's things like Mural and other software that you can use that's really helpful, but making that the most important meeting within your Scrum ceremonies is your sprint, and it's going to totally change the outcome of the rest of the conversations. I know I talked to some folks and I asked them about their sprint planning. And I said, how long are your typical sprint planning meetings? Like, 3 or 4 hours. I said, well, if your backlog's prioritized, it's a 30-minute meeting, and you're pulling. Just pull, everything's refined, prioritized. All you got to do is just say, based on your capacity, it's a numbers game at that point. And you're just filling that sprint, and everyone shakes hands, let's roll. And I think that's the biggest mind shift within the team, of the prioritization of prioritizing. So, I think some people have probably seen this in the Jira once in a while. You can see here, no sprint, nothing's planned. There's 144 issues that no one knows what to do with. So how can we go from this to this? Just a lot better. You have your epics on the left, for those who are familiar with Jira, probably most people in this room. The epics here on the left, couple sprints, 2 sprints are planned. That's a good thing. There's a backlog there. There's still another layer below that we can get to, that we can really take and get down to how are we taking the highest priority. This still is really close. We're getting there. But what's the top priority here? That's still not 100% clear just from having this level of granularity. So our next step, as I pass this back to Nick, and the next, what do we got? Next 40 minutes of our night tonight, the user story mapping, and how we can get to this, and really see what are the priorities and what's the highest value that we're going to deliver within the next few sprints? Not just today. What are the next? You have 2 or 3 sprints ready to go. Here's our value. And then when that stakeholder that thinks something's urgent and the moment, okay, agreed, but well, your fatigue management's coming out because you need to focus on review care. So there's that we're having this level of granularity and prioritization and understanding the value is really going to help you to handle those that outside noise that happens and really be set up for success to deliver the highest value items.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now we're going to shift a little bit and talk about user story mapping. So we've talked about ruthless prioritization. We've talked about the dangers of flat backlog and a backlog that's not efficiently managed. And we're going to now dive into user story mapping and why I think it's such a powerful tool. So some of the components of user story mapping, it's storytelling.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Can you spend like 3 minutes describing user story mapping?
I'm going to get into that. I just,
Okay.
yeah, a few more slides. We'll do a user story map 101 and a 201. Yeah. So user story mapping, it's powerful storytelling, something as a species we've been doing since the age of the caveman to efficiently communicate. It's a hands-on activity. How many times have people sat in a meeting where everyone's sitting down and people are half asleep and completely disengaged? Yeah. But how many times have you participated, if you have, in a user story mapping session where people are on their feet, they're engaged, they're actively paying attention, you really just notice a different kind of flow? Anybody? Okay, we'll get there. And some other things, the color diversity, you have multiple colors, it's simple, but it increases readability, increases comprehension, and simplicity. So while the danger of JIRA is that it gets overly technical, the beauty of user story mapping is you keep it at a high level, you keep it simple so you can understand kind of the huge big picture. So these things lead to shared cognition, shared understanding, team cohesion, empathy, and when a team has this, they can prioritize rules. Okay, so I'm going to talk about an example of or the lack of shared understanding. So this is something that Jeff Patton talks about called a vacation photo factor. And Jeff Patton, he authored the book on user story mapping. He's the Gandalf of user story mapping, so I encourage you to look into him after. Justin, what a beautiful vacation photo you have on your desk. So I might say that if I see this portrait sitting on his desk, but what I don't know is what actually happened that day. It was a massive thunderstorm came in, and it's just ended up being kind of a rough day. But I don't understand that because I wasn't there. I don't have that shared understanding. And so why I'm telling you this is that this is often a problem in IT, it's a problem in business, is that we pass around stacks of paper and we assume that you have the same exact shared understanding of what I have. But that's most often not the case. So that's the power of user story mapping, which we're going to get into right now. Okay, user story mapping. So Jeff Patton, he talks about user stories being like rocks. Big rocks are big stories, smaller stories are little pebbles. And why he uses that analogy is he's saying don't get caught up in the semantics of a feature, a task, an activity, and are you using it in the right place? Basically, as you construct your map, the bigger stories go up top, the smaller stories go down below. And then, as you're creating your map, you want to tell the story from the user's perspective, left to right. That's your narrative flow. And you'll see I have a very simplistic example of making a pasta dinner. And then lastly, prioritization goes in descending order. So the higher priority goes up top, the lower priorities go on the bottom. It's more important to boil water than to add salt to your boiling water, if that makes sense. Any questions on this? Okay.
So there is no tool, you just put sticky notes?
Sorry?
Is this sticky notes, or do you have a tool for that?
So if you're doing it, if you're in the same room with everyone, I encourage you using whiteboard sticky notes. However, as Justin mentioned, Mural, M-U-R-A-L, is a very powerful tool if you have a distributed team. A lot of capability there. Okay, so now we'll talk about the story mapping method. So the first thing you want to do is frame what's the purpose of this map? What's the who, the what, the why? Who are you building this for? Why are you building it? Why does it matter? And then you're going to construct your map. And when you build a map, you want to go, as Jeff Patton would say, he'd say mile wide and inch deep. And what he means by that is you want to stay at a high level when you construct it. You want to consider all possibilities. Don't get stuck into the details just yet. And then after you do that, you can start to explore. You can add variations. You can add blue sky, what if things. Don't feel limited by the periphery of the map. And then lastly, so we'll get into this a little bit later, a little bit more advanced concept is slicing. So that's slicing your map into releases, so you can add value for your customers as quickly as possible. So now we're going to get into the exercise. And we're going to help our friend here, Peter, get ready for work. So there are poster boards, there's stickies, there's Sharpies. There should be about 10 boards around the room. We have more if you need them. So if we can get together in groups around 6 to 8 people, we're going to use our poster boards. We're going to construct a user story map. We're going to help Peter get ready for work. So think about, as you start your map, the second he wakes up, and then the end of it should be exiting out the front door. And some things to help you as you build this map. He's a software engineer. He usually has to shave every morning. He has a wife, a daughter, and a dog, so you might want to consider stories for those type of things. He likes to read the paper in the morning. And then just some general guidelines. Try to use around 20 stickies. Make at least 4 rows, because we're going to do slicing in the next exercise. It's helpful to start each story, sticky with a verb, and then feel free to get creative. Add wild exceptions, blue sky items. So, any questions before we dive in? So I'll time you guys. We'll construct our maps. We'll do a quick little retro and come back together, and then we'll move on to a little bit more advanced concepts.
In the spirit of...
Go ahead. Yeah. So yeah, how did it go? Good?
Yeah, it went well. Our team over here, team comprises of 8 people in all, including me. And then we started jotting down some of the things what we have done. Right from here. Mike, please. Who is the mic guy?
Here, I'll stand behind you. Yeah. Jason, hold the other side.
Okay.
That's fine.
So yeah, that's what we were looking for.
Can you hear me? Yeah, thanks. So here are the things, the activities we came up with, means starting from waking up yourself, then shut off your alarm, then read emails, check the weather forecast, and then dress appropriately. Then use bathroom, of course, then walk, do exercises, take shower, shave, pick up your clothes, pick out your clothes, and then put on clothes. Then walk the dog. Sorry, get the what? Get the paper, newspapers, as it's mentioned there. Then read the newspaper. Check the lottery ticket. That was one of the interesting things you mentioned. Then watch the news. Make plans with wife.
Wow.
Wake daughter up.
What time is this guy waking up?
5 o'clock. 4 o'clock. Then some guys wakes up at 4 o'clock. Sorry. Then cook breakfast. Then feed the daughter. Eat his own breakfast. Socialize with daughter. Get daughter ready to school. Take daughter to tell daughter or assist daughter if she's small enough to brush her teeth. And then what was that? I'm sorry.
Leave for work.
Leave for work. Oh, before you do that, make sure you kiss your wife.
Wow.
And then some of the exception over here means we thought of means if your kid is sick or your wife is sick, then work from home. Yeah.
Or if you win the lottery, you don't go to work.
Yeah.
The second exception was if you win the lottery, then don't go home. Don't go to your work. Just stay home.
That's great. Round of applause.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to keep moving here, but we have another exercise just in the interest of time. Okay, so before we get to the next exercise, just want to introduce some more advanced concepts for user story mapping 201. So, as you look at this map, the high-level section is called a backbone. What are the key activities that you're doing in this map? Either it's Peter is getting dressed, is he eating, just at a very high level. So that's the backbone, and then you have kind of the actual task, lower level subtask below. What you want to do to get to your minimum viable product, you want to create a slice. You want to slice horizontally across. It doesn't have to be straight, but this I like to call is ruthlessly prioritizing. If you have a given amount of time, which we're gonna in the next exercise, what does Peter absolutely have to do to get ready in the morning? So that's one way to come up with your minimum viable product. Another thing, more advanced concepts, you can mark stories as you complete them, as you're going through your actual sprints. In more advanced stories, kind of beyond this one, you can introduce additional user personas, such as maybe his wife or his daughter have different steps they use to get ready in the morning. And then, Jeff Patton talks about adding stuff to the periphery of your map. So don't feel constrained by your map. You can add UIs, mock-ups, pain points. You can even do a current state map and a future state map. So there's lots of possibilities with user story mapping. And a really important one is, as you're slicing, think about what is the outcome you're going to get out of this minimal viable product. And don't think of terms of just what's the feature going to be, right? What is the actual outcome, not output, for a given slice? So think about that as we get into the next exercise. Okay, so we're going to slice ruthlessly. I know I said 15 minutes, but if we can try to keep it to 10 minutes, that way we can have some time for retro. So get back in your same groups. What you're first going to do is you're going to assign a time to each sticky. And then you're going to create 2 releases, 2 slices. So in the first slice, 15 minutes max. You guys might have a little trouble with that. The second release is 15 additional minutes, so 30 minutes total. And as you create these slices, try to get creative, try to come up with a unique outcome for each slice. Try to differentiate between the 2. All right, so I'm going to set the clock at 10 minutes.
Ruthless prioritizing. First priority is turn off alarm, 1 minute. Get out of bed, 1 minute. Bathroom, 4 minutes. Select clothes, 1 minute. Put clothes on, 2 minutes. Brush teeth, 2 minutes. Pack briefcase, etc., 2 minutes. Leave house, 1 minute.
That's great. Yeah, that's ruthless.
You taught us well.
Yeah, I love it.
Now for the second.
Yeah.
Great. We actually have time to shower for 5 minutes. Shave for 3 minutes. Read the paper which you wanted to. Kiss the wife 1 minute. Kiss the daughter 1 minute. But there are a whole bunch of things which didn't get done.
Sure.
Right? That's ruthless.
Yeah.
It's a long kiss.
Anybody else want to share quickly?
That too when you're running late.
What, you guys want to check?
Yeah.
Can I use my outside noise? So we kind of use the table as our backbone, so you can't really read it, but so release alpha will say is wake up, go to the bathroom. Under the category of care for the dog, we just let the dog out and relieve himself outside. Under the category of hygiene, we have just brush teeth, take medicine. Getting dressed, no time for the tie. So we're up to 10 minutes now. We have kiss the daughter, don't kiss the wife if you're in a rush. Gotta grab your work bag and the phone, but you charge it in 2.0, and you rush out the door. In 30 minutes, you got time now to feed the dog as well. You can shower and shave, do those together. Got time to eat, have your coffee, grab your vitamins, right? Less important than medicine. Now you got time to kiss the wife, and you're able to grab the paper on the way out in 30 minutes. Not read it yet, though. Yeah.
So, quick retro, and I'll leave this off of Jeff Patton. Great book, User Story Mapping. I wish I could say I created all this stuff. No, Jeff is the brains behind this. Check out his website, J. Patton Associates. It's got some great resources on there. If you ever, host a user story mapping workshop. So, quick retro. How did people find this beneficial? Thoughts, questions?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Yes.
So the hard part that I find in prioritization is getting people to have a way of saying what is really important. Avoid the hippo approach, and to really focus on making the prioritization decisions based on the real actual value. So what tips can you give to actually figure out, some of these things are more obvious in terms of basic needs versus higher need pressure. But when you, in real life, when you're dealing with things that seem to be of equal value, how do you go about really ruthlessly prioritizing?
Yeah. Well, I think you might have to experiment a little bit sometimes, and sometimes when you do an MVP, it might be a learning slice. It might be something to test if there's traction out there, and sometimes your customers might not know what they want, right? You might have to use research, market research, and your best judgment. So don't be afraid when you're doing development to kind of take a shot based on your valid research, and don't feel afraid to test things.
I think the other piece that I was trying to hammer home of making it a prioritization, and that's great. The team, of course, but really a product owner has to own up, so to speak, and they have to participate, have to be not necessarily available 24/7, but if they're not participating in at least your prioritization meeting and possibly available to the team, hey, quick question on this, how can we help prioritize that? It's their job, it's their role, and I think having those roles defined and making this part of it a part of that job. A lot of product owners go, oh, I'm just working with the business and blah. That's part of their role.
Yeah, there are various tasks that I'm thinking of which one could eliminate in a ruthless prioritization on one sprint, but you can't get away with them routinely. I'm thinking either of an item that creates technical debt or an Agile doing a retrospective at the end of the sprint. In either case, maybe on one sprint, you can ruthlessly prioritize those away, but if you do it routinely, they'll routinely prioritize you.
Yeah, and I think that's where if, the whole mantra of being a couple of sprints ahead in your backlog, and then in a perfect world, your backlog is a couple sprints ahead, it's groomed. So then there's a process of in and out that you always have to argue with of if something comes out of sprint 1, okay, that last priority item on sprint 2 could be replaced by that. But again, there's that reevaluation period, right? Like if your sprint 2 is on deck, and something comes out of 1, you go through that prioritization once again. So it's really a pattern of constantly prioritizing relative to where you are in your time frame. And I think that's where you may end up hopefully catching up to something like that.
Take one more.
Just from the world of transformation, where you use the core purpose, like the purpose of the story versus the purpose of the increment, as the filter test each of the ideas against the purpose, what's absolutely essential, when shaded with things like core values. Consistent with our values are the things that matter the most and helps you make trade-offs. So that way, you help just make sure that you're in alignment with the core purpose of each story.
Thank you. And quickly, just as we wrap up here, just wanted to give a quick overview of Centric Consulting. So we've been in the business for 20 years. We're spread across the U.S. So we have we're pretty heavy in the Midwest, but we have a location in Boston. So we do a variety of different things. We're involved in agile transformation. We do process improvement through our operations excellence practice. We're involved in modern software delivery. Primarily, I'd say Office 365 implementations, Microsoft Teams adoptions. So we do a variety of different things, and be happy to talk to anyone about it. Justin and I will be around after, and just want to thank everyone for the opportunity. I hope you guys had fun and learned a few things, and have a great rest of your night.